A few years ago, I worked the graveyard shift alone at a 24-hour subway, the sandwich shop, not the transit station. About half of the customers were military guys who were also working graveyard shift on base. We were located right next to an Air Force base, and roughly half the customers were drunk people coming over from nearby bars. A small sliver of our customers were mentally ill homeless people and drug addicts who were just attracted to an establishment that was open at 3 in the morning. One night at 3 a.m., a man comes up to the counter, as though he is going to have me start putting together a Subway sandwich. He's wearing a big coat which seemed odd since it was a warm area of California and was probably 70 degrees at the time. He's bearded, probably around 50 to 60 years old, and just looks down and won't make eye contact. "What can I get you, sir?" I ask. He's standing there shuddering, making strange noises, and I realize that he's sobbing. "Are you alright?" At this point, his sobbing turns to laughter. "I gotta come in here to get away from them big grey things with big eyes." "Okay," I say. "You know, the ones with the big eyes that are trying to take me. I have 2 kids, but they took them away from me. They took everything from me. I used to be one of the village people, you know." At this point, an Air Force serviceman and servicewoman walk into the shop, much to my relief, and stand behind the man. The man throws his arms up in the air and says, "You go ahead of me. I'm not in line. I'm not buying anything for myself. I'm buying you kids your sandwiches. You get whatever you want. I'm paying for it." The 2 soldiers politely decline and went to order their sandwiches. I assembled their subs and they began to pay for them, when the man with the coat suddenly announces at the top of his lungs, "I'm God. I am God." The 2 customers then turn to look at the man as he proclaims this. "I will prove my powers." He begins by taking a bag of Doritos off the chip shelf and throwing them across the dining area. "Do you see? Do you see my powers? Behold." The 2 customers finish paying and depart, much to my dismay, leaving me with the man. I run over to the phone and dial the police station. As I do, the man loses his energy in an instant and starts sobbing again and exits the restaurant slowly. As I'm speaking with dispatch, she says, "Yes, we've gotten several calls about this man tonight, but we haven't been able to find him. We'll be down there right away, within a few minutes." Then I see the blue lights of a cop car as police officers take the man into custody along the side of the highway. I always pride myself with being pretty good with dealing with the drunks and weirdos that would come into the middle of the night, but that was one of the few times I actually feared for my life in that job. This happened when I was a bartender about 4 years ago, but I think about it often, and it has changed the way I operate throughout life. I now refuse to go to any store alone after midnight. I was 25 and an attractive, slender blonde at the time. On a busy Friday night, I was bartending with the bar manager, and he had noticed that we were very low on some bar necessities after the dinner rush. Lemons, limes, bitters, that kind of thing. So I was sent out to a 24-hour grocery store down the road to pick up the odds and ends that we would require to get us through the weekend. I picked up everything that was asked of me without trouble at the store, until I got to the liquor aisle. There were 2 country-looking guys that were probably around my age in the aisle, and they were staring at me and whispering to each other in a way that made me uncomfortable. So, I assumed they were making comments about me. All pretty innocent so far. Before they could approach me, I grabbed what I needed very quickly and power-walked to the self-checkout. I really booked it out of there, because when you're a bartender, it's kind of like you're on a stage and are required to be charming and interact with people that you otherwise absolutely wouldn't be able to tolerate unless you were being paid to do so. This is another reason why I'm not a bartender anymore. I get to the self-checkout, and hot on my tail are the 2 guys. I'm scanning my stuff, and they use the scanning station next to me. I get a better look at them now, as they are right next to me. One is taller, muscular, and average-looking. The other one is shorter and more plump. They both looked dirty, and their eyes were completely bloodshot. I'm not even sure if they were high or something or had already been drinking for a while. They continued to stare at me, and our eyes awkwardly met. So I did the pleasant, Midwesternly thing to do and flashed them a quick, half-assed, closed-lipped smile to be polite. The taller one starts trying to talk to me. "Hey, looks like you're ready to party, huh?" I replied something like, "Yeah, something like that. It's not for me, though." They walk closer to me and ignore their responsibility to scan their items. "Oh, must be for your boyfriend, huh?" I flash the awkward, tight-lipped smile again and roll my eyes slightly, like, "This is your hint that I'm not interested, fellas." The taller one continues to try to talk to me. "You should come hang out with us tonight. We could show you a real good time if you know what I mean." "No thanks, I'm good. Already have plans." But the tall one starts to get upset that his moves aren't working like he'd hoped, and starts using a more threatening tone and moves very close to me, literally 2 inches away, but I ignore him, staying focused on the scanner. I don't think he had showered in a few days by the smell of him. He gets a little louder and says, "I see how it is. You probably only screw doctors and rich men like that. You think you're too good for us? We can show you that you aren't. We can teach you a lesson." Now, I'm not sure what context he meant this in, but it definitely wasn't good. Still not looking at him, I turn away, so my body is blocking his view of my purse, which I set on the scanner, to grab my 4-inch pocket knife out and slide it up my jacket sleeve in case I need to protect myself, acting like I'm searching for my wallet. I do this, however, in view of the self-scan worker standing at her podium, and look at her with wide eyes trying to communicate that I do not feel safe and that I might need help. I turn back to the machine and slide my credit card to pay, while the creepy and hostile guys are practically standing on top of me. The machine malfunctions and starts beeping. The lady worker comes over immediately, and the guys standing next to me change their expression from "I'm planning to torture you for a few days and toss your body into a creek" to "just your friendly good old country boys making polite conversation over here." They actually tried to act like I knew them and were friends, so the worker wouldn't be alerted to their ill intentions. They tried joking with the worker, saying I was stealing something and that's why the machine went off. The worker was definitely not buying it. She was a 6-foot-tall woman with some muscle on her. I wouldn't mess with her on my best day. She pressed a few buttons on the screen, shooting the guys a very unimpressed look when they were trying to act charming, and cancels the order completely. She turns to me and says, "I'm sorry for the inconvenience, ma'am. This machine seems to not be working correctly. Why don't you gather your things and I'll ring you up at an actual register." She puts her hand on my back and gives me a wide-eyed look like I gave her a minute earlier, letting me know that she sees I'm in danger. I pick up my things and follow her to a register that's near the security office. The guys linger around the self-scan, still glaring at me, and eventually complete their purchases but stand at the exit assuming they're waiting for me. I felt like I would be walking to my death if I made it to my exit in that moment. The worker keeps a close eye on the guys and scans my items. As she's scanning, she tells me there really wasn't anything wrong with the machine I was using. It just misread my credit card. And she said, "I had a bad feeling about those guys from the moment they walked in, and then I saw them getting aggressive towards you. I already rang security to be ready to walk you to the parking lot and make sure you left safely when you were ready to leave. Then I saw you take that knife out and put it in your sleeve, getting ready to protect yourself. Good girl. As much as I'd like to see you show them, they picked the wrong girl to mess with. I'm glad I was able to pull you aside and make sure you were safe. I see them waiting by the door for you. I'll just keep pressing buttons on the screen and act like I'm having trouble with your order until they give up and go outside. Our security officer and I are both going to escort you to your vehicle when you leave." I thought to myself, this woman seriously deserves a raise. I thanked her over and over again and told her what they said to me, and I was getting afraid because I don't know what these guys are capable of. As I'm talking to her, my bar manager calls me to see what's taking so long. I explain what's happened, and he was obviously very concerned and ready to come up there himself and kick some ass. A sweet sentiment indeed. By the time I hung up, the guys had given up and walked out to the parking lot. The worker said to give it another few minutes because she had a feeling they may still be in there, waiting for me to walk out and see which vehicle was mine so that they could follow me. My instant thought was, "No way, they have to have been gone by now." But I was wrong. The worker and security guard escorted me out, and it was after midnight, so you can imagine how empty the lot was. Towards the back of the lot, there sat an old, big pickup truck running with the lights on pointed towards the store. It was a huge parking lot, and it wouldn't have made sense for them to initially park like that. So I'm assuming they moved the truck to sit that way, so that they had a full view of when I exited the store and got to my vehicle. It was like being stalked by hungry lions. When I unlocked my car and they saw that me, the worker and the guard were looking directly at them, and that I wasn't getting in my car until we watched them leave, they then peeled out of the parking lot. I mean, they seriously did a burnout to establish that they were pissed and trying to intimidate us. Poor creeps didn't get their way. I thanked the worker and the guard over and over again, as I'm certain that they had just saved my life, or at least saved me from having to live with whatever those guys were planning to do to me. I did write a long letter to the store manager and their corporate location describing how their employees protected me and how grateful I was. I really hope that earned her a promotion, bonus, raise, or something. She didn't know me at all and was ready to protect me, which really isn't her job, but she did it anyway. Needless to say, I do not go late night shopping by myself anymore, and never will again. This night took place a few years ago, while my father and I were living in a small rural town in Alberta. I was fairly new in this town and didn't know anyone but my dad and co-workers. I had found a job as a key holder in a liquor store that closed every night at 2 a.m. My store was located in between a pharmacy and a grocery store, a place well lit where I felt safe most nights. Not knowing yet that this town was actually known for its drug problem and random creeps. But anyway, on this particular night, my coworker and I had been working late. We needed to finish unloading pallets of liquor, since we had another shipment coming in the next morning. And at the end of the night around 3:30 a.m., I told my coworker that she could leave, and that I was going to take care of closing down the store, which basically meant counting the till and cleaning up, as she was exhausted, and I had the keys of the store anyway. After she left, I quickly finished my tasks, took all my stuff, and called my father. At the time, I didn't have a car, and my dad would come pick me up every night and bring me back home, which was maybe a 10 to 15 minute drive to my workplace. I have an amazing father. In return, I always made sure to be ready and to wait outside the store for his arrival. I didn't want him to have to wait for me, because I knew he didn't have much time left to sleep, as he had to be at work in the morning. I got ready to get out the store, set out the security system and locked the door behind me. Now you have to understand that I wasn't supposed to finish this late at night, and that once the alarm system was on, I couldn't go back inside because the regional manager would receive a security call if I opened the door and the alarm would automatically start to ring, and I did not have the code to shut it, since I never worked a morning shift. The store policy mentioned that if you forgot something inside, you'll have to wait until the next day to get it back. As I was waiting for my dad standing in front of the store, I heard some noises coming from my left. It sounded like someone was breathing loudly. The pharmacy was right next to my store and had these big red columns in front of the entrance, and I thought the noise was coming from around these columns. I looked to my left but didn't see anything, so I brushed it off, thinking that it was probably the wind or just my very tired self imagining stuff. It was almost 4 a.m. after all, and I had worked really hard that evening. After a few minutes, I heard the noise again. I started getting nervous. It was definitely coming from my left, and this time, I knew that it wasn't all in my head. At that moment, I noticed a movement and realized that I wasn't alone. A few meters away on my left, someone was crouched down behind one of the columns, and I could not see his face, only his hands holding one side of the column while he was slowly moving his head to look in my direction. I was terrified, completely paralyzed with fear. I knew my father couldn't be very far away from the store at this point, so I grabbed my phone to call him. My dad answered and I told him to hurry up and explained that someone was hiding next to me and that I was petrified. My dad said that he was going as fast as he could and told me to grab my keys and get inside the store. I was trying to find them inside my bag when I was panicking too much. My hands were shaking and I couldn't find my keys for the life of me. I felt completely horrified when I realized that the man had stood up, still hiding behind one of the columns only a few meters away from me. My voice filled with fear. I asked my dad where he was, and he shouted that he was almost there. I started to slowly move towards the grocery store that was on my right, never turning my back to him. The very tall and imposing man looked at me again, but this time, he got out of his hiding spot and started to walk in my direction with the biggest smile on his face. I can still recall thinking that this was it. I was going to die. I was trying to decide if I should start running for my life or if it was better to face him and fight him if need be. But suddenly, I heard a big noise coming from my right. I turned around and saw my dad driving as fast as he possibly could into the parking lot, honking and turning his high beam headlights on, I believe to startle the man. My feet finally decided to move as I ran as fast as I could and jumped inside my dad's pickup, tears streaming from my eyes. I watched this man look straight up at us and slowly wave at my father for what felt like an eternity. The creepy man started walking closer towards us, and as he got closer, my father finally gets a good look at the man and said, "Oh my God, girl, I guess you haven't met Peter yet." I didn't understand. My father started laughing, tears coming out of his eyes while I looked up at him, still in complete shock. To me, there was absolutely nothing funny about that moment. A few seconds before, I thought my dad couldn't get here fast enough and that I was going to be murdered right there in front of my workplace. My father waved back at him and we drove off slowly. On our way home, he explained that Peter was a very nice man with a cognitive disability. He said that Peter lived in town and that every morning he would sit inside the Tim Hortons that was located in the same parking lot as my store and would ask people if they wanted a hug. He apparently did that every day, and everybody in our small town knew him. My dad told me I should probably give him a big hug next time, and I would get a coffee at Timmy's, since I probably scared the poor man to death. Either way, Peter the Hugger, I'm sorry, but let's not meet again. Well, not while I'm alone, outside at 4 a.m.